All right, guys. Hey, hi, and welcome back to You're Your Biggest Critic podcast. I know it's been a while since we've been on. We've been in a hiatus. School's been really crazy, but we're getting ready to go on Thanksgiving break, so I should be back in the full swing of things. So don't fret, we're back again with another podcast this week, and I'm so excited because the sweetest girl, we have mutual friends, small world, and she's here to tell her story, and I'm so excited. We're really going to be talking about mental health within school systems and our legislation and how they can do better. So everybody give a warm round of applause to Taylor. She's our guest this week. So Taylor, tell us a little bit about yourself or what you want our viewers to know going into this podcast.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. This is my first podcast. I've always wanted to do one. And I'm so excited to be able to have a platform to share my story onto it so more people can get the message about the mental health issues on college campuses these days. A little bit about me. I'm a senior at UNC Chapel Hill. I do not live there anymore. I'm an online student. I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am majoring in sports administration. And one of my biggest passions is spreading the word about mental health. And I'm super excited to keep on talking to y'all. So thanks again for having me.
Oh my gosh, yay, I'm so excited. It's going to be really fun. All right, so we as a society, we can talk about mental health all day long till we're blue in the face. But if we want to see real change, it starts within us because our legislation and school systems have been letting us down time after time. So we need to start using our voices for the voiceless and really raise awareness, funds, and everything in between to show our legislation that we are taking this seriously. And I feel like this conversation that we're about to have is going to start that snowball, and I'm really excited about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your story and what shaped you into being this advocate for mental health.
Awesome. Yeah. So my story dates back to when I was a freshman in college about 3 years ago. I arrived on campus at UNC in fall of 2018. I had plans to rush a sorority, make friends with all of the girls that lived on my hall. I lived on the all-girls hall in the Granville West Tower. UNC people will know what I'm talking about. And I was super excited to go into a great culture of people that love UNC. I didn't know many people going into UNC. Not a lot of people from Raleigh went the year that I started, and I was super optimistic about meeting new people. So I made a great amount of friends on my hall. It was all girls, so it was super easy for us to just fall into the same ropes together, learn the school together. And about 10 days after we had gotten pretty close and learned how to do college together, sorority rush began. And sorority rush is pretty brutal. It's definitely not it's not for everyone. It's really hard on the mental, it's hard on the self-image, but for some reason, I decided to do it, and I ended up rushing a sorority. And you might want to cut this out. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say names, but I was a Phi Mu. Anyone knows it if I was there on my social media. And I rushed Phi Mu, and I was so excited. It was such a great sorority for me. Like, the girls and I got along so well, but it is not considered a top tier sorority. So at UNC,
for our viewers who don't know about sororities, or even myself, I go to an all girls school, so we're technically one big one. What is considered a top tier sorority and what's not considered a top tier sorority? Because I even kind of get confused too. I know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like there's not a clear definition or line that says you're top tier. It's just how the all of campus and all of Greek life.
Gotcha.
So there are certain sororities that obviously girls with higher incomes can go into, and they really rush kind of based on financials, so they keep the higher income people in the top tier. I think it's mostly financial, and then they just want to boost their image to the best it can be, so they get the image of being a top tier. People look at them, they like people looking up on them. But there's about 3 or 4 top tier sororities and about 3 or 4 top tier fraternities. But and what I saw is that everyone worshiped them, or everyone wishes they were them, which was pretty sad. So I was not in a top tier sorority, but I would say almost my entire hall was, if they were in a sorority. And that completely divided us. And I was so shocked because I was like, well, if I have a good friend that I've been hanging out with, but she's a Kappa Delta and I'm a Phi Mu, she's not looking at me the same anymore. And we suddenly stopped crossing paths as much. cliques begin to form faster and faster. And it's really hard on the mental health because you're thinking you just made all these good friends, but suddenly the system of Greek life is making you question your worth because you didn't rush or decide to join one of these top tier sororities, which I didn't know much about when I was 18. So.
Yeah, I feel like, and this is not to bash sororities or fraternities.
Absolutely not. I had a great experience, and I know people love their experiences, but yeah.
But like Taylor just said, if you're not in the top tier, then you're wishing that you were in the top tier. And then you're forming these like thoughts of like, well, why am I not good enough to be in the top tier? Like, oh, this is unfair, or oh, like, let me drop and then rush again. And so maybe I can be in that top tier and let me change my image, change like eating habits because, you know, she's skinnier and blonder than me, you know, and it just becomes all these distorted thoughts of, or like what if thoughts, or like, oh, I'm not good enough thoughts. And that's like not healthy. And I think that really needs to be preached upon when rushing. They need to have like an onboarding of like you said in your notes, I really liked it, of mental health for sororities and fraternities, because men go through mental health as well.
Absolutely.
But there really needs to be an onboarding of it, because I feel like, especially in sororities and fraternities, mental health is not talked about at all.
No, and it's not talked about enough. And like how you said in the intro, how legislation has failed us. We can't rely on these institutions to protect us these days. Like we have to rely on each other. And that's one thing that really wasn't prominent in UNC's Greek life culture, was the looking out for others, or, hey, like we were such good friends with this girl. Why isn't she still around? Let's check in on her. Like it was really sad to like see girls that you'd hung out with, and then they would look like they didn't even know you on campus. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. But you move on from that. And I found my own community within my sorority, which was great. And I really enjoyed it. But I do think that there's the stigma around top tiers that makes Greek life more harmful than good. And Greek life is a great way to make friends on campus. They give so many events. The philanthropies do great things for the communities. It shouldn't be the way it is. It should be a more inclusive, open community as a whole, not just between the tiers.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm not in one. The college I go to, Meredith College, it's in Raleigh, downtown Raleigh. It's like one big one, but there's still even some divides within that.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
But yes, I totally agree with you that mental health needs to be like an onboard of like, okay, so you're rushing, but let's go through the pros and cons of what will happen, because if you're not prepared for that, that can be a shock. Because also, you're 18, you're new, you're away from your parents and your friends, and you know, and it's like all of these new changes. And then if you get dropped or your friends change, that's also a new change. And change can create anxieties and all this other stuff because of the unknown change. So
exactly. And the way UNC did rush when I was there, they've changed it now, but they did it like 2 weeks into school. So like your classes are fully picked up. You're starting to make some friends, but now all of that's getting like mixed up. I personally think all sororities should hold rush in the spring semester to give all freshmen time to get acquainted to their new community, their new before, and also just make friends without the pressures of Greek life, and then go into it in the spring. I think that provides a much healthier transition into like the Greek life culture.
I agree. Do you think legislation has let down the school system on resources for mental health and for college students? And how can we change this? Because like I said in my intro, like time and time again, there are resources on college campuses, in high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, but time and time again, we are let down. We have more suicide rates. We have more people dropping out because of anxiety and depression, and just like people are not doing well in college. Like, how can we prove to legislation that we're serious about this?
I mean, I think just opening the conversation is a great start. I think once we get everyone comfortable in their own skin to discuss these issues amongst one another and get rid of how taboo it is and the stigma, especially around men's mental health, how boys feel like they can't seem like weak or vulnerable to talk about this stuff. I think the recent events, the tragic events that happened on UNC campus should have been a big wake-up call for all North Carolina State public universities, private universities, schools all around, because it really highlighted the lack of help. I had experiences at our mental health clinic here on campus. And, you go in, you do like an hour and a half little, they call it an evaluation of you, and they'll write you a script for medicine just right off the bat, like before therapy session, like barely seeing a psychiatrist. They give you medicine and then they'll get you into some therapy sessions, but you can only go to 8 like within one mental evaluation. So if you want more therapy, you have to go in for an hour and a half to 2 hours to get evaluated again to get more therapy. And it's hard because like college students don't have enough time for that. You shouldn't have to go through a 2.5 hour evaluation and just say that I need someone to talk to. I mean, I think everyone should go to therapy. I don't think it should be something that should be measured to qualify you for therapy.
No, I agree. And aren't these services supposed to be free? Like, aren't
exactly
paying these therapists to be here? So why do we have to get evaluated? Like, maybe I don't have mental health, but maybe I'm just like, maybe I just had a family member pass away and I couldn't go to their funeral because of COVID and my school's 10 hours away. Or maybe I'm having roommate problems. Like, I've had plenty of like roommate problems and like family things happen while my 4 years of college. It's called life. And I went to my school's therapist about it and I got free services. But I think that should be the way for everybody. You don't have to have a mental health illness.
No, and you shouldn't feel like you have to. And I think that's what prevents a lot of people from like moving up to taking care of themselves in mental health. It's a big roadblock because you go in there and you're like, well, I don't have severe depression. Like, I don't need to be severely evaluated. I'm fine. I'm waking up in the morning, but I would like someone to talk to about like the issues you just said. College is hard. Living with people for the first time is hard. The workload is difficult. And especially since COVID, I was expecting campuses to do a whole lot more to welcome students back to campus, considering it'd be I didn't go back to campus personally, but I could only imagine the readjustment from being online for 3 semesters and then suddenly you're back in the full swing of things.
Yeah, it's frustrating because as a mental health advocate, and I'm sure it's frustrating for you to see that, I feel like nothing's really changed. And I mean, you can post hashtag end the stigma, you can post hashtag like empowerment, like all my hashtags that I have, you can post those till you go into your grave. But until we speak up and until people feel more able and our able-bodied people can speak up for these causes, then nothing's going to change because the legislation is just going to think everything is okay because no one's speaking up.
Exactly.
Saying, hey, what you're implementing is not working. Like, and I'm trying to think of ways that each school, because each school is so different. Meredith is so much smaller than UNC.
Oh, yeah.
What are some ways you think like we as a legislation can change for our schools?
I think really just bringing the decision makers into the conversation more than they already have been. I think, like you said, with the Instagram post, you can post that all you want, but they're not reading it. The people whose our faith of mental health like relies on is not reading your Instagram stories, although they're great, although they can be eye-opening to some. I think it's time to get the important people, the chancellors, the deans of the colleges, the deans of students, all of the influential people on campus need to hear the message that we're preaching. And I think at UNC, one of the best ways that I could think of people doing this is just organizing clubs and organizing groups and speeches and just getting everyone together to fight for the same change on campus.
Yeah. How do we think that we can stop from like what has happened from happening to people in the future on all college campuses, private, public, even high school?
Yes. I think like what I kind of hinted on earlier is realizing that we have to take care of each other versus it's going to be a long time before unfortunately, unless they get a new change of heart, that our legislation will truly start passing bills and funding our resources to truly help us. But I think all students need to come to a realization that you have to treat people as you would want to be treated yourself. You don't know what the person who you're ignoring on campus is going through, or the people that you just might look down on, maybe if you don't even know it. But I think it's time for everyone to just be openly nice to each other and go out of their way to help others. I think we need to really start looking after each other after everything that's happened and checking in on your people, like your school, other schools, just not forgetting that you don't know what everyone's going through and that everyone needs a person since our resources have failed us.
I agree. And it shouldn't take multiple tragedies
No,
for this to start. And I think that's what I'm most upset about is that it took tragedies, not just on your campus, but I mean like on every campus.
Oh yeah, it's happened at multiple schools. Yeah.
For people to, or legislation to like wake up, or chancellors to wake up, or deans to wake up. And I mean, you have all these resources and all the schools claim they have money. Well, where is this money going?
Exactly.
It's not going to resources for students. We're still stressed out. We still do. We have all these breaks and like, everybody's like, well, you have a month off or you have 2 weeks off for this. And I'm like, I'm still doing schoolwork.
Yeah. It's like the breaks are phony because I feel like there's definitely not enough breaks within the semester. I think that's one thing that a lot of students are wishing and praying for. Like, after the tragic events happened on UNC's campus, I believe they happened over a weekend. And on a Tuesday, we had like a university day celebration where they were canceling classes. And they had canceled that to make it a mental health awareness day. But
I saw that
before that, they did not cancel classes. So it's kind of like, is class really more important than giving people to just take in what just happened and relax and like get their thoughts together? It was a very tragic weekend for UNC, and I could only imagine how the freshmen in those dorms were feeling. And I mean, they just went right back to it like it barely happened. I know a lot of UNC students were very hurt and they felt let down by their administration when they lost like their time to just process all the events. I mean, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So I think it should be a wake-up call, but I think we need more advocates like us to just come out here and talk about it for change really to happen. I think we need to get the higher people involved.
And if we get the higher people involved, what changes do you think you can see? Because I feel like, and I mean, you can go around in circles. We could talk about this for hours, girl. There's
absolutely
a system everywhere, and it starts with one crack, and that crack leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. But like, what cracks should we fill first? Like, and I think that has everybody wondering because like, there's just so many. It's mind-boggling how we got to this point of so many that no one knows where to start.
I know, I definitely hear that. I had a hard time when I first read the question on the notes about what to do first. I was like, wow, that's like a deep question. I think one thing that needs to happen, and this could happen fast, is just more funding directly to, ours is called CAPS, our mental health resources. So they need to be hiring more therapists. They need to pay them better so they are happier to treat our students. There needs to be more availability, more psychiatrists, more therapists. I mean, and it just needs to be all overall easier process. I think they just need to completely rebuild, and I'm sure other campuses too need to just rebuild their mental health clinic to be as the same standard as their, regular campus health clinic. Mental health is just as important as physical health, and so I think both aspects should have pretty much the same amount of funding.
It just is so mind-boggling to me how we got here. Like,
no, I don't know how we got here.
Like,
decades of student suffering. And I couldn't even imagine in the time before social media how these students felt when they were burnt out. And mental health was definitely more of a taboo subject back in the 90s, 80s, early 2000s. It's crazy that it's like 2021 and people are just now feeling comfortable to speak out and tell their stories. So, I don't know how we got here, but I think it's just been looked over because no one has talked about it. I think when they're looking at their budget, they're like, oh yeah, they're fine. And also social media is very misleading. Like I shared my story on Instagram, and I had plenty of people reach out to me and they said, I had no idea your Instagram pictures looked like you were having the time of your life. Your Snapchat stories, I was jealous. Like,
it portrays false reality. Everybody does. I'm guilty of it too. Like, I went to last weekend, and I went on a trip for fall break, and like, people probably look at like our Instagrams and like, they're having the time of their life. They're
like,
and
they're having the best
like
time.
5 papers deep and like,
and then and then it's Sunday night and I'm like shaking of anxiety because I have so much work to do. And it's like, no, the weekend wasn't that fun. It's just, I think like colleges really need to realign how they're teaching us. This goes into like a much deeper like conversation, I feel like, with like education based mental health issues, but I feel like a lot of people, I think the workloads are getting overly done, if that makes sense. There are certain assignments that just don't need to happen. It just builds up and it builds up.
Discussion boards.
Yes, like forum posts. Like I get that we're not in the classroom talking, but I don't need to write a 3-paragraph response and then write other paragraphs to respond to others. Like it's really redundant. I think just like more creative ways that we can be educated and teach others. And I think that's one thing our generation's really going to change. I think our generation's one of the, I mean, obviously homework's important, but I think our generation's going to really get rid of like the intense homework that you have to do. I mean, not like back in high school, you went to Sanderson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Broughton, and I mean, we were at school from like 8 to 3 pretty much. And then we would have like 4 hours of homework on top of like clubs, athletics. We both were super involved in Young Life. I mean, it hasn't stopped. And now that we're all seniors in college, like we were burnt out.
Yeah. And I think that depending on your major, like if you want to be a doctor, okay, well maybe that's like,
oh yes,
like a lawyer or a nurse or whatever.
Yes, all of those where you like need the material. Yes, like they're going in there to study.
But sometimes I'm like this assignment is like cuckoo, like we don't need it, and like it's just adding more to my to-do list. So is this beneficial? No. Is this adding to my mental health? Yes. And I think professors need to realize that, because I'm tired of hearing professors like, well, we're preparing you for the real life. Real life is stressful. And I'm like, half of us won't even use
is stressful.
Yeah. You know, and like,
no, it's, and also like general education credits. And like, I was fortunate enough to wrap up my like intensive major classes, which I understood the workload for. My Spanish minor classes, my history minor classes, like I want the workload for those. I want the degree.
Because you want to
now I'm working. Yes, like credit or gen eds that like I'm taking a class right now. It's a great class. It's called Intro to Drama, and I like analyze plays and stuff, which is great. I mean, I like reading plays, but it's a lot of work. And I'm like, I hate to say it, I'll never go into the theater industry. Like I've never really been passionate about the theater, but like that class gives me so much anxiety, and it's kind of like, for what?
Yes. And, like I completely agree. I'm constantly making a to-do list, crossing things off, adding to it, scratching things, like, and in reality, yes, college is important. I'm not saying like don't go to college, but like at what point are we costing our mental health to get a degree?
And also not even like, and I'm blessed enough to where I didn't have to take out loans, but I literally thank God every day that I don't have to, because I can't imagine these people that just went through so much hell the past 4 years of studying, and then they go out into the real world and they're not even going to make as much as they're going to make, because their student loans are going to take away half of their monthly salary every month. I mean, that's messed up. Like they're just paying to get put through this horrible system where people don't really care about them, just to come back out of it where they're still down bad. Like it's a really, I think there needs to be a big education reform, because I think education really instigates mental health issues in our generation.
No, I do too. And like, there's like 3 classes this semester that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. I love it. It's my major. It's literally exactly what I want to do. And then there's like these 2 other classes that I'm like banging my head across the table. Like, why did I choose to take these? Like,
yes, exactly.
Like the work doesn't make sense. And like, you know, and you're just like, this is just a waste of time.
No, you're so right. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think when we start with one crack, all the other cracks will be filled.
No, if you really start thinking like all the cracks, like you think, wow, it goes back to high school. It goes back to, I mean, even middle school, you had so much homework. Like a 12-year-old should not come home and have homework. They should be able to go like explore like their hobbies and interests and find their passion. And I really think America as a society is way too career based. If you look at other countries, careers aren't the main goal of life. It's family, it's love, and it's binding together and helping one another. And I think,
and career based to what? Because we have these influencers now who get paid out the wazoo for posting a picture. Like there's this one person who got paid like thousands of dollars for posting a brand deal, which is great, because I'm not saying they do not work hard, because I truly believe
I could never be an influencer. Yes, like that's a hard job. I do not blame them.
Because you have people following you, you have cameras in your face, you have fans, you have all these deals. I completely think y'all work so hard.
Oh, absolutely. Like,
to a millennial, it's frustrating because I'm sitting here getting a 4-year degree and you got the luck of the draw of
yes,
TikTok. And now look where you are versus us. And we're going to have student loans and we're going to have this degree, which I'm excited to use my degree. But to the next person, you know, and then that creates a false reality. And then there's a crack and a crack. And
I love the influencers. I love how they've been able to monetize social media. I think that's a really cool thing
to
come out of our generation. That was a really cool thing to come out in the times of like COVID and stuff, when like these influencers and celebrities and like they couldn't go out and make money with their own appearances. There were no appearances to be made. So like the brand deals really came in and like saved the bag for a lot of these people. And I just think, I don't know, it's so hard to think about because I mean, our whole life since I was like in 8th grade, everyone's like, you got to go to high school to get good grades, to go to good college, to get a good degree, to get a good job. And it's like, where do I do something that I want to do, not that society's pressuring me to do?
And I've talked about this in former podcasts that right there is one straight line, but there's so many other lines that we could go to that, you know, we can still make money. Some people hire you with a GED now. They're like, you don't have to have a college degree as long as you're willing to work and learn the material that we're giving you. And you do well at it, we'll hire you, you know.
And that's so awesome to hear. I've heard of a lot of great strides some companies and local businesses have been making to make their jobs more of like attainable for the all public. Because if someone had a really hard bringing up and a really hard childhood and didn't have the opportunity to go to college and barely had the opportunity to finish high school, I mean, that's not their fault. They still should be given the same opportunities as us as 4-year college students should be. And I mean, I think college is a really weird aspect of American culture compared to other countries, compared to other cultures. College doesn't take up that much thought, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's definitely, I really hope someone hears this and
the right person.
The right person hears this and takes it to the legislation, takes it to the board, takes it somewhere, and we can start the change. Because again, like so many cracks, if we fill this one crack, I feel like no one can stop us.
No, I hear that. Yes.
And I feel like some people are afraid because they're like, yeah, I can share my story, but what will that do? Because so many people I feel like have shared their stories and there's been no change. I'm not just talking about college campuses or high school or middle school or friendship groups or family members. And there, you know, there's just been no change. I feel like anywhere with the higher up. There's been changes within communities.
And that's where we have to start, I think. I think we have to build from the ground up. We have to start with getting everyone in our communities thinking the same way, thinking, well, we have to look out for each other. Wow, this is truly an issue. And once we have everyone on the same page, we can then start to get the notices of higher up than decision-making people. And I think that's why it's so good to like share your story on Instagram. I was definitely pretty hesitant when I first shared it. I was like, gosh, is anyone even going to read this? Like, are people going to get mad? I was really scared about people getting mad at you on UNC's campus, but it was the complete opposite. I received so many sweet messages, phone calls, comments. I mean, I think opening up the conversation to make other people feel like they're not alone, because especially at UNC's campus, I mean, everyone thinks it's the best. I mean, no shame to UNC, it was a great time. I had so much fun there, but it's not the absolute best moment of your life. I think college is a little overhyped. It's not the best 4 years of your life. It's a really big time of confusion and stress and anxieties about the future, and you're attempting to make friends, and some people are moving all over the country. They're away from home. It's a big transition period into adulthood. And I mean, it's really hard to have all of these extra like stressors come put onto you when it's already an insanely stressful time.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I can't wait for more people to share their story and share on their platforms, because that's why I like social media. Part of me hates it, part of me loves it, because we can share our platforms and we can share, you know, hashtag end the stigma, and we can share like mental health awareness and stuff. And if we keep doing it, hopefully it falls in the right hands, and we can keep going up the chain, and we can keep filling those cracks within our system. And I'm so excited that we had this conversation. Thank you so much, Taylor, for coming on. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we head off?
I think before we end this great conversation, thank you again for having me.
Of
I would just
course.
like to say, just take care of others. You don't know what other people are going through,
Yeah.
and speak up. If you have a story, it might empower many others to feel confident to speak up. And once enough of us do, maybe we can roll up the chain and get some very influential people to hear us. So thank you again for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Taylor. And remember to go be kind humans, because like Taylor said, you never know what someone is going through. If you haven't already, liked and subscribed so you don't miss another episode. You definitely don't want to miss this one. I'm so excited that we had the opportunity to talk about how our legislation and school systems need to change. Thank you again, Taylor, and everybody have a great weekend. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.